If your creative push has helped you, you can help the show by becoming a patron on Patreon. For $20, $10, $5, or $1 a month, you can not only show your support of the podcast, but also do so much to help to cover all the costs. Head to yourcreativepush.com/Patreon to find out all of the goodies that you can get when you become a patron at each of the levels, and thank you in advance for helping this show. Your Creative Push, episode 209.
I never thought that it would turn into this. So the thing that maybe is in the back of your head, or it hasn't even gotten into your head yet, it'll be the thing that gets you to the place where you want to be.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Marty Bruckner. Marty is the creator of the blog Spaghetti Toes, which has been featured on sites such as the Huffington Post, the Today Show, Buzzfeed, and the Daily Mail. His first book, I Love You With All My Butt, an illustrated book of big thoughts from little kids, published by Workman Publishing, comes out on April 4th. Marty, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Youngman. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. So I gotta ask, how did Spaghetti Toes start?
Okay, so Spaghetti Toes started one night at my dinner table. It was a couple years ago, and my daughter was 2 years old and had just kind of started to talk a little bit, and we were, obviously talking to her a little bit more, and we were having spaghetti, which is kind of our dinner that we have every night because my daughter loves noodles, and it's just, if you ask her what she wants for dinner, it's noodles. So
can't go wrong.
Yeah, it was a night just kind of like the rest, and she was playing with her food, and had kind of the spaghetti had kind of worked its way down to her toes, and my wife looked at her and said, "Please don't put spaghetti between your toes." And I kind of looked at her, my wife, and I kind of just thought, "Is this, this is kind of what our life is now." And it was a good thought too. I loved it. And a little bit later that night, I was giving my daughter Harper a bath, and she was eating cheese because that's what we do when we take a bath, and she had dropped her cheese in the tub, and I said, "Did you just drop your cheese in the tub again?" And the fact that I said again just kind of stuck in my head too. And just being an artist and drawing my whole life, I thought, I went to work the next day and it kind of stuck in my head. And then when I came home, I just scribbled out this little 2-year-old foot with some spaghetti noodles kind of in between them, and I wrote the words, "Please don't put spaghetti between your toes." And I thought this would, in the back of my head, I'm like, this could be a funny little book. And as, time went on, these sayings and these thoughts and, things we would say to her and the little funny things that she would say to us in her little 2-year-old language, I started to write them down. And I didn't tell my wife I was doing this, but I drew them all out. And I think I started with about 8 of them, and I put them into a little book that I got published, or just made through a website online, and I gave it to my wife for Mother's Day, and she loved it. And then after that, I started a little Facebook page for it. Just I remember sitting down with my wife, late one night, thinking, what could I call this? And I had thoughts, like, oh, stuff my 2-year-old says, and funny kid quotes or whatever, and then none of it was really working in my head, and I kept going back to this little drawing of the toes and the spaghetti, and I just wrote down Spaghetti Toes, and I truly think that the name was such an important part of this kind of building itself into something, just because it's something different, and it's funny, and it's not just stuff my daughter says. And after that, the Facebook page started to get a lot of likes from my friends and some people, and it was about 6 months later, I had been trying for a long time to kind of get my artwork noticed, like a lot of artists. It's incredible if you are at the Huffington Post or a certain website, and you almost daily, you will see some artist on there that, this person is doing this, or, look at what this, mom is doing with her child's lunch or whatever. And I'm like, I think that there's something here that people could enjoy. And I sent it to a website called Pleated Jeans, and just on a whim. And the guy actually emailed me back and said, "These are great. Let me send them to me, and I'll put them on my website." And after that, I remember that night I was sitting watching TV, and one of my buddies texted me and said, "You're on the Chive," which, I didn't really know much about that website. But then after that, it was.
Now you do.
Yeah. And then it was, I sat here and watched my Facebook likes go from 200, who were basically just my friends and family, and then over the next 6 months, getting contacted by CNN and the Huffington Post and the Today Show and just on and the Daily Mail, and watching those likes go from 200 up to like 18,000 before I even knew it. And I would get messages on my Facebook page for people to ask if I did this, if I could do this for them and for their families. And we put a little listing on, my wife had a great little Etsy shop where she sold and made little burp cloths and little mustache pacifiers and all of this neat stuff. And we put some listings up there for custom SpaghettiToes drawings. And, within a couple months, we had over 500 orders, and I was working around the clock, and, it just went crazy. So that's how it started.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things about that. And I want to say that I love the name of it too. It's like a secret, and it's like once you know that, it like tells its own story. And now that we all know the story, now it like has special meaning to us too. I love it.
It's very childlike, and it's kind of gross, and it's kind of funny, and it's just
SpaghettiToes. Yeah,
and it's funny now too, because people on Facebook and stuff, I have a nice following there, and people call me the Spaghetti Dad, and my wife Spaghetti Mom, because she's a funny person and always has these funny little things that I'll post, and people just love to hear about it. So the name was important, very important, because I think that I've had some people come to me and ask me to do logos for them, and they've even said that they just say I cannot get the right name, and it's hard, until it really hits you, it's kind of hard. So I got lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about like your story is that like you created this wonderful thing that's like it's really sent you on this like new trajectory, and it all stemmed from creating something to remember, like to document these like funny little moments in time, these funny quotes, and it just kind of started with you just kind of creating it just without thinking about like the grand end game, and I think that's really encouraging for people too, because it's just like, just make that thing that like, that you're like, you get that idea to make something, just create it, just for yourself, just to give to your wife for Mother's Day or whatever, just create it, get it out there, and then, see what happens later.
I totally agree. And that was kind of the main purpose of this. My wife and I had this ongoing email back and forth, and it was called Harper's Firsts. And it was just, the first time she walked or the first time she, did anything. And this email is just growing and growing and growing the first couple of years of her life. And this was just kind of another way, there are quote books out there, and, you can write down your child's first quote. And we had gotten one from some good friends of ours. And I wrote down one quote and it was, I remember waking my daughter up from a nap, and she said, "Dad, you scared me the crap." And, she meant to say, "You scared the crap out of me." That's probably from my wife. She's got kind of an interesting vocabulary. But, and I wrote that down, and I'm like, God, the things these kids say are so funny. And I've got a big family, and I know that my mom had always written down, she has books of, I have 5 older sisters, and she has books for every single one of us and all the things we said. And it's a goal of mine someday to do, a book for her of all of these. So maybe when things slow down a little bit for me. So
yeah, that's so cool. And the art itself and these quotes they're hilarious and they're awesome, but it's kind of like a duality, because it's not just about the quotes. Your drawings are like they go so perfectly with them.
Thank you.
They give them like a personality of their own and like add so much to them. Like, so what is that process like now that you have created a lot of them? Like, when you hear her say something, or when you get a quote that you say or your wife says, and you're just like, oh, that's a really great quote, do you get the flash of the image like right away, or is it like you get the quote and you have to like kind of think about it for a little while?
Most of the time I get an image, and I will say that there are prints that I do that I know, and you can kind of judge them. It's interesting online now, if you post something on Facebook or on Instagram, and, I still do pieces that, back in the day, I remember getting 20 likes on a piece was like, oh my God, I can't believe 20 people liked this. And then stuff goes crazy in the world, and you're getting, you might get 500 on a piece. And it's interesting too that, I'll still put quotes up there that just don't really strike people as being that funny, or they're kind of funny, but they're not that great. But there are some that I know instantly when Harper says it, or my wife or myself, that is going to be good. And with getting so many quotes from so many people, all over the world. Some of them are just amazing, and some of them are really just sweet little thoughts that they just want to remember. I get a lot of them that are just like, I love you, Daddy, or, I love you forever, or just simple little thoughts that really mean a lot to these people. And sometimes those are the hardest too, because there isn't, how do you turn that into something other than just a heart, or, a dad and a child together, or, you just kind of have to think a little bit of, what can I do to make this one different? How can I make, 600 drawings all completely different, but all have the same look? And I was able to kind of create maybe between 5 and 10 different kind of looks, maybe slightly different. Some are a little more graphic and some are more, more depth to them, but they're all still kind of childlike and playful. And I don't want to get too serious with them very often. My whole life I've kind of been a pencil illustrator, and I still love it. I just don't have the time for it anymore. So this is kind of a completely new thing to me, to be able to kind of draw things that my daughter will walk up. She's 5 now, and she'll love it. She loves the colors, and if I'm drawing a little superhero or something, and that's, I think, when I know that something is good. So
that's one of the questions I wrote down. Like, what does Harper think about all of this? And does she now say crazy things because she knows that it's going to get a drawing out of it? Or
she's tried a few times, and she is becoming a little more aware. And it's funny too, because there are certain times when I will ask her questions because I've got an idea, or if I give her the right lead up, she'll come up with this brilliant thought, and it doesn't happen that way at all. In fact, now that she is 5.5, she knows when I'm trying to do this. And yesterday, I had been asked by my publisher, Workman Publishing, to do something nice for the National Women's Day today, International Women's Day, and I instantly wanted to do it. I have an amazing mom and 5 sisters and a great wife and daughter, and so I sat down with Harper and I said, okay, what do you think about? What's the best part about being a woman? And normally just on a whim she'll say something, but she told my wife, she's like, well, we have boobs, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not probably gonna go there. And then I had asked her a few more things, and they weren't coming at all. And I said, okay, I got it. You're a woman. The world is in trouble. They're coming to you, Harper Grace. What are you going to do to save this world? And she looked at me and she's like, sorry, Dad, I guess it's just not the world's day. And I'm like, oh boy, I can't really do that for International Women's Day either. So she had, but since I keep a log of everything she says, I kind of went back, and she sings in the bath. She sings these amazing little songs, and I write them all down. And she had said, I'm a girl, I've got brains, and I'm going to save the world. And I'm like, that's pretty perfect, I think, And I just drew these little, I drew her in the middle, and then a bunch of little brains that were women, and of all different international women, and just kind of put it out there. So
yeah, that's a good quote, but it's not as good as my elbow has a sprained ankle.
Yes, and those are the ones that kind of visually they're in my head.
Perfect.
And I do struggle. I do struggle with it too, though. I mean, there are some that either, I've got so many of Harper's that I have half sketched, I do everything on the computer basically through Photoshop. And, so I've got all these files that are just kind of like, they're like captive sculptures from back in the day when these sculptures just couldn't get the stone to work right. It wouldn't come out. And I've got so many of these. She one day said, I will call you Bird Dad. I'm like, Bird Dad, I can do that. I can do something with that. And this was kind of when Birdman, the movie, was coming out, and it just didn't work. And there's so many of them, so and I get stuck.
Yeah, that's okay though. It's you got to try. You just and the gems will come out if you just keep trying.
Yeah.
And there certainly have been a lot of gems.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
So let's talk about the book. I love you with all my butt. I can't stop laughing.
No, that's the Workman. They picked the title, and I think they got a good one.
Yeah, for sure. So can you talk about like what people can expect with that book?
Yeah. So the book it comes out on April 4th, and it's a pretty thick little book. There's a lot of artwork in here, and Workman had roughly 600 or more of my pieces of art to choose from, and it was a really interesting experience. After this all went kind of viral for me, I started to get really amazing messages and emails from publishing companies and agents and everything. And I got a great agent, and he put some of my artwork together and he sent it out to the publishing world. And Workman Publishing is one that they had contacted me before all of this, and it was a perfect fit. They do a very small selection of books per year, and they're a great family, and it just worked out really well. They were great to work with, but they made the book almost kind of like a gift. So it's not necessarily a kid's book or a children's book, but it's a good book to give to a new mom or even any mom and dad or whatever that has kids or they don't even have to have kids. But it's just funny. It's there are quotes from people all over the world in here, not just me and my family. I even went back and did one that I had said to my mother when I was a little boy, and they put that in there. And
nice.
It's colorful and it's funny, and there's just so much in there. And I just hope people can get in there and get lost like I used to with all the books I loved when I was little.
Absolutely. Now, I know, Workman has been very kind and they're a great publisher to work for, but were there any kind of challenges this is your first book, correct? Yes, it is. Were there any challenges and was it a lot of pressure to kind of create this first thing?
Yes and no. I think that, I got lucky that, after we had agreed to do the book together, I had already had a couple of 100 pieces of artwork done, and I knew that the book was off in the distance. I've been working on it for about 2 years now, so I had time. I didn't even know the release date for about a year. So I just, I talked to them every once in a while, and they just said, keep working, keep working. And I was trying my best to do all of my custom prints because people, they purchased this from me, and they trusted me to do a piece of artwork based on something that was very special to them. And I didn't hear very many people come back that were unhappy. A couple of them were maybe thinking that's not quite what I had in mind, and I learned a lot too. I learned that to ask a lot of questions because I don't know these people. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what's special to them other than this quote. So as I was doing that, I was still trying to do some of Harper's quotes. And because I still have to this day about 200 or 300 of them written down that I want to do eventually. And so once we got into the book, we were kind of sharing files throughout, and I would get messages from them that, we want you to send us, these 300 prints in a format that we can kind of drop into a book. And it really was not that hard. They were great to work with. We never really disagreed on anything. They kind of picked everything. I had my say, and they said, send us your favorites and prints that you really want to see in the book. And they did those. And the title of the book went through a couple of changes. I loved, please don't put spaghetti between your toes. That was kind of, my original idea. And they didn't want to distance it from Spaghetti Toes, but they wanted it to be different. So, they chose this quote, and I think it's perfect. And, but it did go through some stages of, they told me to give them my top 10, that could be a title of a book. And, this is what they ended up on. And then the cover was a little tricky too, because I love you with all my butt, there's a lot of ways to go with that artwork, so they didn't really want, a butt on there, and I didn't either. And, cause a lot of times in my artwork, I will take everyday objects and, kind of bringing them to life. And I went through stages of artwork where there was a little butt monster hugging a heart monster, and, or giving it flowers, or, and they were struggling with that. And I was too. And, we got down to it, and I said, give me another try here. And I sat down and I just kind of scribbled out this little girl, that kind of looks like my daughter. And she has herself drawn on this big construction piece of paper in the shape of a heart, the words, I love you with all my butt. And she's so proud, and she's holding it up way up over her head, and she's got her crayons, and just the thought, the sentiment, because I told my mother, who's 75 years old, I told her the title, and she's like, oh no, just the word butt being in there.
Right.
She was like, oh, I don't know. And I said, but listen, it's the most innocent thought a child could have. What did they mean? They meant I love you with all of my heart, and they just made that mistake that all little kids make, and that we all laugh at, so much. So I think it came out, and I'm really happy with it, and they are too. So
yeah, it definitely captures the spirit of what you're doing with this.
Yeah, but it was a process. I mean, it took about 6 months to really get it right. We went through a lot of changes, and when you're doing a book, you aren't the final say at all, and I'm okay with that too. But but again, I never was like, oh, God, I really wish they would go with this or that, or I knew it was a process, and we ended up. I knew it would end up at the right place, because a lot of times with my artwork, even this one I did last night about the girl with the brains, I was not happy with it for a long time, and I just had to walk away and go to my daughter's kindergarten roundup and think about it a little bit. And when I came home, it kind of all came together. So,
do you find that like when you do get in like a kind of a creative block like that, where it's just something's not working, it's not clicking, it doesn't feel right, that's the best method is to just kind of walk away from it for a little while? Or do you have any other kind of tips for people that struggle with that kind of resistance?
I do think it's best to walk away. I've got my computer set up in my basement, along with my TV, and this is where my daughter plays, and we have 3 crazy dogs, and they're always around me and everything. So my computer actually kind of faces my couch. So when I do finally, I've had enough of just staring at my computer, I'll go lay down on my couch and watch a little TV, but I can always still see my computer. So I'll leave that piece of artwork up on my screen, and as I'm watching TV or doing whatever, I'm looking at it kind of out of the corner of my eye, and that is when a lot of things I'm like, oh, why didn't I? This is what I'm going to do. That I'm going to change this color, or maybe the artwork is completely wrong. And here's what I'm going to do. That really seems to help. I'll just even if just sitting down to watch an hour of TV with my wife before we go to bed, that's when I kind of fix those problems. And another thing too is I'll take my dog for a long walk. Or I'll call my mom, or my wife helps me so much, because she's just brutally honest. She's like, that doesn't work. That doesn't look right. And I get mad. I get really mad at her too. And I'm like, yes, it does. I just spent 3 hours on it. It has to look right. And she's like, no. She's like, I'm not going to lie to you. And she is always right. And it makes me so mad. And and she, but she is, and she sees it differently, and she'll just, she uses, she knows I'm sensitive, and she won't just come out and say that's terrible or anything. But she will. I know when she's not, in love with it, and I do know when I've done it correctly, and she's like, oh my God, that's perfect. And so she knows me, and she knows that she can, and she is always right. It drives me crazy, but she's so much help to me, and we will sit down here, after we put Harper to bed, and it's, maybe 9:30 or 10 or later, and we're, she's kind of winding down and I'm still working, and I'll look over at her. I'm like, I need your help. And she's like, most times she's ready to help me, and other times she's like, I'm done for the day. We can't do this right now. And I'm like, you're right, and so, it's always interesting, but she's always right. That's all I got out of this. She's just always right.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Whenever I'm struggling with something, it's like I'm drowning, and I just grab onto my wife for dear life and drag her down with me if I can.
Yes,
it's like, please help me.
I know. I am the same way, and and it is. I've got a buddy that I talk to a lot, and he's an artist, and I'm like, God, this is what am I doing wrong here? And I won't even tell him. I won't even show him the artwork. I'll just talk to him a little bit, and a lot of the times, even if it's just through email, just me typing my idea to him. Everything changes in me typing it, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, as I'm typing, what if I do this, this, and this? And it just, it helps. But very rarely I'm very lucky that I just get stuck and I can't get unstuck. So I get pretty lucky. I've got a lot of good helpers too. And even Harper, my daughter, she's coming up with good ideas, and she loves to sit on my lap and draw with me, whether it be, drawing at the kitchen table with crayon and stuff, or we'll sit down and I'll work on Photoshop with her, and I will draw a little bit of something, and then she'll grab the mouse, and what's crazy, she's left-handed, but she'll grab it with her right hand because it's over here, and she'll do these crazy little drawings, and I'll help her color them in, but even just doing that with her, it's like, I've come up with completely different styles of artwork just working with her on my computer. So.
And I like what you're saying about writing things down. That's been a theme on this show the past couple of episodes. It just like it helps with so many different things. One, like coming up with ideas. Two, like actually putting the ideas in your head, like out into the world and starting that process of getting them out there. And 3, like setting goals for yourself, like to write them down, to be accountable for yourself, but also what you just said too, like writing down your problems, and like almost like writing a letter to yourself if you have to, if you don't like have a friend that you want to write to. Just the act of writing it down, like it's like a different thing in your brain gets moving, to find a solution. And it's so helpful just to figure out what you don't know and what you do know by writing it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got, instead of a notebook, I use my drafts folder in my email. I will write myself all these notes and what I have to do. And, I've got a lot coming up in the next month with the book coming out. And I just keep telling myself, just, my mind can kind of run away with itself a little bit. But this, it goes back to all the cliches, just one day at a time and focus on what you have to do today. And, but yeah, writing things down and especially making notes and making goals. And my wife is always like, you have to write it down. And we have spreadsheets and Google Docs and everything with all of our stuff so we can both work on them. And being organized, you have to know what's coming up. And I just cross things out, cross them off as I go. And otherwise I'd be lost. I wouldn't know where to go.
Now, aside from like kind of creative blocks, do you have any other forms of resistance that kind of find their way into your daily life?
Not really. I don't mean to sound like I've always got these great ideas, but I've been so lucky my whole life that I basically create and do artwork all day, every day, and I have never run out of stuff to. My head is full of these things, and I wish I had more time to do it. But at the same time, I'm a dad and I'm a husband, and I have to, I have to and I want to come home, after work and working a full day of being creative, and then we'll go for a walk and we'll walk the dogs and we'll make dinner together and we'll watch TV and when it's nice we'll go swimming and all of that stuff. But that's so important to me because when Spaghetti Toes first took off that first year or two in the summer, my daughter was 2 and 3 years old, and I didn't do anything with them almost all summer because I was working. I was working every weekend, all weekend, and every night from the second I got home from work until I went to bed. And that was really hard too. And what was nice, so I was still home and I was in my basement surrounded by them, and we still did do stuff, but it was hard. I had to tell a lot of friends and family, I can't do that this weekend. I can't go with you for this or, and I didn't miss any holidays or anything, but it was hard. And, but as far as the resistance, I would say that, I don't really get stuck very often, but if I do, and my wife made me write this down. She said that guilt is a good way to get out of that because I have to get this stuff done, and she's in charge of getting all of the business side of this, and she ships all of my artwork all over the world, and she's like, you're late on this one. You have to get it done. So I guess that's a good way to fight through it. I don't have a choice sometimes, so. No, I've been very lucky though. Things work, and I know they don't for a lot of people, and they didn't for me for a long time too. Just on my personal artwork too, I went through a lot of ideas and ways to really, I have a full-time job. I've had it for 18 years, and I love it. But people kind of want to eventually do stuff for themselves if they're able to, and I'm still working towards that though. So it's every day. You just have to keep going.
Yeah, and you mentioned the job and coming home after a full day at work, and I think a lot of people listening and myself, I have a full-time job as well, and this is all in my free time doing the podcast. Do you have any advice to give to people that have they have a very full life, whether it's the job or kids or both or whatever else you have to do to take care of business, to find that time to work on your creative passion?
Yeah, I think number one is to make sure that you give your full-time job or whatever else you're doing everything you have still, because to me, it's still important to me, and I do love it. And that's separate than from when I come home. They're completely separate. I think some people, could fall into they maybe find something new and it kind of starts to leak a little bit into what the other thing they do. And that's kind of a scary thought for me. And I don't do it that way. So, I do think that if you're going to try to do something, on the side, or if you have a job or you want to do something new, or if you don't have a job at all and you want to do something, start something new, start something fresh. I remember when my wife, she worked with me at my current job for 10 years, and she was awesome and she was very important there. And then after my daughter was born, we kind of ran into do we want to get daycare? Do you want to stay home? What do we want to do? And it wasn't working to where she was only working a couple days a week, and my work was so, they were so helpful and cool with her kind of doing a little bit of both, but after a while it did not work, and everybody knew it. So she decided to stay home with my daughter, and that was not easy. That was half of our income. And I remember the day we decided that, along with my boss, Michelle, my wife, was putting my daughter to bed, and I grabbed a couple beers and I went on the porch, and I thought, I have to do something. I have to do something myself to make this work. We have to, I have to do something. And I went through a little freelance venture with a buddy of mine, and that didn't really work. He didn't have the time, and we were really just trying to get, logo work and some newspaper stuff. It just didn't work. And my wife and I tried to do the same thing. Just, let's just start a little freelance company where we're just doing artwork for people. And that was good for a little bit, but then I started this other little thing called Creatureland, where I would redraw little kids' drawings, their little crayon and marker drawings, and I would kind of bring them to life. And that was fun for a while too, but even that was hard, that quotes are different. People can just they remember them and they can just shoot them over to me. But with the kids drawing, it's like they had to pick the right one and get it to me. And that didn't work either. So, when my wife said please don't put spaghetti between your toes, and in the back of my head, I'm like, this could be fun. I'm going to try to do this too. And it worked, but this was like a 5-year process, and that's not even that long. To be honest with you. And I just I got lucky, the guy at Pleated Jeans was so cool, and he ran my artwork, and had he not done that, I'd still be trying, I would still be trying. And in this day and age with the internet, being able to go viral or to get your artwork out to the right person or the right website or the right people, it's not everything, but it's so huge, it just opens up so many opportunities. And all it takes is that one person. I worked with Disney because of this. A guy from Disney contacted me and had me do a project, which is, as an artist, that's the top of the top, to be able to say that Disney came to me and asked me to do artwork for them. That it does not get any better than that. So it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the lesson there is to kind of just keep trying different things. And what would you say is like kind of the test for when something isn't working, when you throw in the towel on a certain project, for people that maybe are trying to think of different things to do?
First off, I'd say to just continue to, with Spaghetti Toes, I sometimes almost question if I'm doing things a little bit, my wife always says, when you first started this, your artwork had such a distinct look, and it was these big bright colors, and it was really simple. And then when I started to do things for other people, their quote didn't work that way. It was more of just a family quote. So I started to draw a lot of people and a lot of little characters and maybe a full family and everything. So I think it's important to really stick to, if it's artwork that you're doing, to one style. And I'll even look through my Instagram pages sometimes. I'm like, gosh, I need to be a little more consistent. And, the really great Instagram people or artists that I follow, the second you see that post, you know who it is. And I hope my artwork is that way, but sometimes, I can get it go in the wrong direction sometimes. But, as far as when to tell somebody to give up, I don't ever want to say that. And I know that's not what you're saying either, but to move on to something new, I think you just know. I think I knew that with the Creatureland thing that this might be a fun thing. I might sell a couple here and there, but with Spaghetti Toes, when it finally took off, I mean, I was getting so many emails and messages a day that I couldn't keep up, and it's kind of stayed that way for 2 or 3 years now. So and hopefully it keeps going. So we'll see, what happens after this. I've got a lot of, and I've got a lot of new ideas too, that I want to try different things. So I think if you can always have those ideas, and I've got lists and lists and lists of other projects too that might turn into something else. So
absolutely, that's exciting to keep them in your back pocket.
Yeah, big time. It's just to find the time to do them.
That's my next question then. How do you balance your time? Because like we were talking about before, with all these ideas and all the different, I know your wife is helping you out a lot, but I know how much work goes into creating, like, you've created a brand essentially, and now you're making a book, and you have the blog to keep up on, and you have a full-time job, and you have a kid, and you have 3 dogs.
3 dogs. Yeah.
I have 2, so I know that they're work too, and you want to spend time with them. So how do you juggle all that? How do you balance that?
It's not easy every day. Mentally, it's not. I don't know. I think that if those are my problems in life, I'm very lucky. This, the world is kind of a depressing place sometimes, and I always try to keep things in perspective. If I'm having a rough day and I get home and the kitchen's a mess, and the dog is doing something, digging up a hole in the backyard and whatever, God, that's not that bad really, and if I get to, at the end of the day, have a nice dinner with my family and put my daughter to bed and get to come down and do artwork or do whatever, I think perspective is so important, because people, not everybody can say those things, and people have very difficult lives all over the world. I don't, and I don't mean that in a way that, I've got this perfect life, but perspective is what keeps me, from kind of getting to a place where I don't want to do anything, so I'm very lucky, and I'm thankful for all of this. And perspective, it's just so important to me.
Yeah, perspective is an important thing to have, especially when things around you are seemingly falling apart, just to take a deep breath and realize, falling apart really isn't falling apart.
It's not. And for some people it is. And that's where, you have to think, one of the things my dad always told me, he was a man of a few words, but he always said, most of the things you do in life, you don't want to do those things. You're not going to want to do. So, and so you just have to, you do them anyway. Everybody does stuff every day that they don't want to do. Everybody want to go to work every day and work all day long and this and that. But yeah, I just think that, counting your blessings and being happy with what you have. And because I struggle with that too. I mean, I can get into these little moods, and one of the things my wife and I will always tell each other is that we are so lucky we have such good lives. We've got these things around us. Why are we cranky that, our drive to work was a little longer than we wanted it to be today? But that's human nature though too,
Well, when you have a long drive to work, all you got to do is put in your creative push, and
agree.
You'll want that drive to be longer. I'm just kidding.
Yes, I am with you.
Oh man. Did you have a favorite book or a YouTube clip or anything else that you draw inspiration from?
Yes. Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein was a book that I can't tell you how many times I own it. I've owned several copies. And when I was in grade school, I remember waiting in like a queue in a line to get that book. Somebody would have that book and you'd have to wait till the next week when you went to the library, and just getting that book and getting it home. And for me, just, almost more than reading all of them, just the artwork. Shel Silverstein has always been my favorite, and we have almost all of his books, and my daughter loves them now, and I love reading them to her. And he's probably been my biggest inspiration as far as books, but in art history, and people like Basquiat and Paul Klee, and really the whimsical artists. I was always drawn to just the playful nature of all of those artists is something that, and it's so cool too in the world we live in now with Instagram and all of these places that I've loaded mine up with as many artists as I can find, and I get lost there. It's like a rabbit hole. You just go and find all of this artwork, and it's so inspiring. I'll get done with that, and I'm like, I have to go do something. I have to go do some art right now. So
Yeah, and it's all free. But yeah, you can get sucked down the rabbit hole too. It's where you're just, and it's important to not get too depressed at how awesome all these other artists are, just to like kind of do your own thing, you know?
Yeah, I know. I look at it all the time like, first, why didn't I think of that? Or what, this, I could never do that. Or how do they do that? And I love the drawing tutorials and the little quick videos. And I'm still trying to find a few minutes to do that, where they actually, you see what they draw on their screens and stuff. That stuff blows my mind.
Yeah, it's all cool. Such good resources out there.
Yeah.
But we'll have what you mentioned linked up in the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Marty Bruckner. Marty, it's time for the final push. It's where I ask you to reach through the microphone, grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
Okay. I think it's probably some things that I've already said. I just think it's so important to, and I don't want to be so cliche, but just the never give up attitude. And, it took me a while to get to here. And I'm still hoping that there's so much more in my future, and that pushes me to, I might do some artwork and send it to somebody and they don't like it, and it's easy to be like, well, and I'm done with this, I don't want to do this. But you can't, if in the second you do that, there's all those sayings out there and everything, the moment you say you can't and all this type of stuff, but you have to keep going. And if the thing you're working on now isn't working, it is a fine line to, you don't ever want to give up, but it might be a time to put that one, on the back burner for a while and start something different. I never thought that what I did, for Harper and my wife would turn into what it has. I hoped, but not even the first time I did it. It was just something fun. I scribbled it out and I did a couple more, and I never thought that it would turn into this. So, and a lot of times the thing that you maybe is in the back of your head, or it hasn't even gotten into your head yet. It'll be the thing that, that really gets you to the place where you want to be.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, man. And Marty, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Youngman, thank you so much. I'm honored and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, dude, no problem. Thank you. And you can find Marty on his website at spaghettitoes.com. That's spaghetti-toes.com. On Facebook, he is Spaghetti Toes. On Instagram, he is Spaghetti Toes Dad. And I Love You With All My Butt comes out on April 4th. And we'll have links to go purchase that at the show notes page today. You can get it at Amazon or Workman Publishing. So we'll have links to that along with everything we talked about today at yourcreativepush.com/Marty Bruckner or yourcreativepush.com/Spaghetti Toes. And also, we'll have links to the Etsy shop where you can get stuff as well at Harp and Squirrel. Marty, thanks again.
Thank you, Youngman. Thank you so much.
I had so much fun talking with Marty. Such a nice guy, and I really love his story, so I really appreciate him coming on the show to share it with us. The one thing that really stuck out in my mind was when Marty talked about setting Harper up, to say a great quote, and how it just doesn't happen like that. And I think this really relates to the creative process for anyone, really, but definitely for me. It just comes when it comes, and for me, it's almost always when I'm either indisposed, like in the shower or driving, or it comes when I'm smack dab in the middle of a ton of work. And I think it's really easy to brush away those inspirations because the fact that you are on your way to work, or you are making dinner for the kids, or you aren't near a pen and paper or your cell phone to write that inspiration down. But that's just when it comes, and when it does come, you have to embrace it. Grab it no matter what and get it down to make that the number one priority, even if you are busy with other things. Because if you don't, it will become a secondary priority and eventually a forgotten thing. The universe says, you don't want this idea that I just gave you? Fine. Screw you. I'll give it to somebody else. And you can't force that creative impulse, especially on others, like Marty was saying. It comes randomly, so you have to seize that opportunity when your daughter gets spaghetti in her toes or she drops cheese in the bathtub, and you get that feeling that this is funny and other people should share in this kind of wonderful moment of hilarity or joy or fear or whatever the feeling is that you get. You could potentially write a book about it. But it takes that first step of writing it down and bringing it into existence, even if it does just start out as a gift to your wife and something that you and your closest friends and family can share together. Again, the book is I Love You With All My Butt. I have it in my hands. Marty was kind enough to send me a copy of it, and I can't tell you the smiles that it brings to my face. And I highly recommend that you pick up a copy. You can get it, again, yourcreativepush.com/209 if you want the link for that. Also, Your Creative Push is the podcast of the day over on Anchor. You can download the Anchor app if you want to listen to me getting interviewed and talking about podcasting and about this show. That will be up on the 7th of April for about 24 hours on the app, or I will have a link where you can go to listen to that channel on Anchor through your web browser. But Anchor is really cool if you haven't checked it out already. It's like kind of like Snapchat for audio. It's a really interesting and easy way for you to actually publish your thoughts in audio form. It's super easy to use and it's super cool. I'm getting so addicted to it, and I'm probably going to start publishing stuff for the podcast on that app. So definitely check that out if you are listening to this when it airs on Thursday. And also, I tried something new last week in the Facebook group, and I think I'm going to do it again every Friday from now on. Just a thread where you can share the things that you've been working on this week and get some feedback from everyone else to kind of show off what you're doing and to keep each other motivated. So that's going to be a tradition. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but maybe we can get some suggestions in the thread about that as well. It was just a really big success last week, so I would definitely want to keep that up. And again, you can get there at yourcreativepush.com/group if you haven't joined already. But that's all I've got for you today. Have a wonderful, productive weekend, and we will be here for you on Monday if you need the push again. I love you all, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.